Chapter 980. Looking at the little fatty in front of him who was in a daze, the burly man had a fierce expression on his face, but he was cursing in his heart. His superiors didn't give him any tasks, but they gave him such a lousy task. He couldn't hit, touch, or knock into anything, and he had to teach him like a son. He had never received such a task before. This was even more frustrating than having him carry a big rock. Are you going to drink it or not? If you don't, go back and carry a rock. The burly man shouted in a rough voice and glared at him. Ning Lang bit his lip with tears in his eyes. He punched the bowl with a missing corner with both hands, feeling very wronged. His servants didn't even use such a broken bowl, nor did they drink such thin porridge. However, he was doing heavy work, and this was the only thing he could eat. Do you have steamed buns or something like that? I won't be full if I eat like this. No, it's up to you whether you want to eat or not. The burly man glared and shouted. If it were any other time, he would have lashed out with the whip. Rumble. His stomach growled. Ning Lang looked at the bowl in his hand and could only drink it with his eyes closed. After drinking the bowl, he felt as if he had drunk a bowl of water. He licked the corner of his mouth and stared at the bucket. I want more. Although it wasn't delicious, it was better than being hungry. More? Where do you think this is? No more, go to work. The burly man snatched the bowl from his hand and put it behind him. He pushed him forward. Go to work. Ning Lang glared at him. Why can't you let me have enough of this thin porridge? Pfft. Don't think about it. It's fine as long as you don't starve to death. You want to drink enough? Do you think this is your home? The big man gave him a shove, and the whip in his hand lashed at his side. Go! Ning Lang gritted his teeth and glared at him. He thought to himself, just you wait. When I get out of here, I'll teach you a lesson. At a place not far away, Feng Jiu and Duan Yi were watching, and the two of them had different expressions when they saw this scene. The former was teasing, while the latter was shocked. How long do you plan to keep him here? Duan Yi looked at Feng Jiu and asked. When he can't take it anymore. She curled her lips. It seems that he still has some strength now. The corners of Duan Yi's mouth twitched when he heard that. He looked at Ning Lang who was being ordered to move rocks. He was wearing tattered clothes and a pair of broken shoes. His hair was disheveled and his face was bruised and swollen. Who told him to sell out his identity as the ghost doctor the moment he saw Feng Jiu? From the moment he found out about that matter, he knew that this brat would suffer. He didn't expect that this brat would be waiting for him here. Let's go. Let's find a place to drink. Feng Jiu called Duan Yi and turned to leave. They came and left quietly, and Ning Lang, who was not far away, did not know anything. 3 days later, in the morning, Ning Lang, who was still sleeping, was woken up by the two of them. They dragged him to the bathroom, changed him into a set of luxurious clothes, and dressed him from head to toe. Ning Lang was shocked from beginning to end. When he saw someone putting powder on his pale face that was thinner than a few days ago, he couldn't help but cry out. What do you want? What do we want? There are people coming to the brothel to pick young people. They like people like you who are 15 or 16 years old. Just right, we can sell you at a high price. The manager who walked in said with a smile, but his heart was weak. Chapter 981. You don't want it. Even if you don't want it, you still have to take it. The steward gestured for someone to escort him to the front, while he wiped off his sweat and hurriedly followed behind. No, I don't want to be sold to a brothel, I want to go home, I want to go home. He struggled and shouted, but he had not eaten for a few days, and his cultivation was sealed, so he appeared to be weak and powerless, and was forcefully escorted forward by 2 cultivators. When he reached the front of the field, he was once again locked into a metal cage. In this metal cage, there were 5 to 6 youths who were 15 to 16 years old, and their appearances were more outstanding than the average youths. Furthermore, they were all dressed up, all wearing new clothes, and looked neat and tidy. He looked at the few youths, and could not help but have a worried expression. Don't tell me I really have to be sold to those places. Just as he was feeling uneasy, he suddenly saw two familiar figures. Seeing them, his eyes immediately surged with joy, and both his hands tightly grasped the door of the metal cage, shouting outside, Fengjiu! Fengjiu! Duan Yi, save me, save me! I'm here, I'm here! The two people who were talking seemed to have inadvertently heard him, and turned around to look. When their gazes landed on the figure locked in the metal cage, Duan Yi took large strides forward, and Fengjiu slowed down by half a step. Little fatty! Why are you here? Duan Yi looked at the person locked in the cage with a face full of astonishment, as if he did not know anything, and asked in confusion and astonishment. Wu! Duan Yi, I've been sold. His eyes reddened, and looked at Fengjiu who was slowly walking over. Fengjiu, I shouldn't have snuck away, these people aren't good people, they didn't even give me food to eat, and even made me do heavy work, look at my blisters. Fengjiu stopped in front of the metal cage, and looked at the youth who had obviously lost weight in the past few days, and asked with a smile, why didn't you tell them that you have money, and ask them to let you go? I did, but they didn't believe me. He said in grievance. Don't you also have a certain level of cultivation to protect yourself? Why didn't you escape? I can't escape, my cultivation has been sealed. Seeing that he was clearly smiling, but there was no smile in his eyes, and seeing that he did not say that he would save him, he could not help but feel fearful. Fengjiu, you'll save me, right? From the moment you escaped, I had nothing to do with you. Perhaps you can escape with your own abilities. No, I can't get out. He slightly lowered his head, somewhat not daring to meet his eyes. Save me and get me out. Ait. Are you obedient now? She raised her eyebrows and asked, test, where? Why are you still here? Are you looking for me? Ning Lang looked at Duan Yi who was standing outside and asked. Duan Yi glanced at him, and said, no, Fengjiu said that there's no need to look for you since you've left. We heard that there's a local market here today, so we came to take a look. Ning Lang was silent, and lowered his head. Not long after, Ning Lang saw the manager who was as skinny as a monkey trotting over, bending over with a fawning expression as he followed Fengjiu. Seeing this completely different attitude, he sighed in his heart. Chapter 982. They brought him to the restaurant and ordered 12 dishes. Before all the dishes were served, they saw Ning Lang sitting down with a starving look on his face. He scooped a spoonful of rice and began to eat in big mouthfuls, not even bothering to speak to the other two. Fengjiu and Duan Yi looked at each other and also sat down at the table. The two only drank wine and didn't eat much. An hour later, Ning Lang took a breath and finally put down his chopsticks. Are you full? Fengjiu asked with a smile. I'm full. He rubbed his stomach and burped. This is the fullest and most delicious meal I've ever had. As soon as he finished speaking, he paused for a moment and looked at the two of them. I thought you guys had left, I thought you guys were really going to be sold to a brothel. Those people, I told them I was from the Ning family and that my family's wealth was comparable to a country's, but they didn't believe me. As he spoke, his face turned gloomy. Everything I have on me has been stolen by those people. Hearing this, Fengjiu glanced at him, then threw a qiankun bag to him. Your things are all here. Alright, let's go if you're full. We've already been delayed here for a few days. Ning Lang was stunned. He opened it and couldn't help but be astonished. It's really my treasures. Why are they in your dot? He wanted to ask, but he saw that Fengjiu and Duan Yi had already walked out. Even the white ball pet had already followed them. At that moment, he hurriedly put away the qiankun bag and followed them down. After the three of them left the city gate, they directly threw out their magic tools and flew towards the next second-class country. About 2 days later, they arrived at a town in another country that was adjacent to the Tsang country. Aren't we going to the Hell Mountain Range? Why are we here? Ning Lang followed beside Fengjiu. Looking at the red-clothed man walking leisurely, he was a little confused. For the past 2 days, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was not quite right. However, he could not figure out what was wrong. It was true that he had saved him, but how did his things end up with him? They had arrived at the inn together. He also knew that Fengjiu and Duan Yi had not gone out at that time, so it was naturally impossible for them to find someone to deal with him in that short period of time. But after thinking about it, he still felt that he had been tricked. However, due to his coldness, he did not dare to ask about this matter again. I'm here to find someone, Song Ming. Fengjiu said and entered the city with them. Looking at the bustling city, her gaze fell on a tea stall in front of them. Let's go have a cup of tea first. Little Tun Yun obediently followed behind her with the other two following behind her. When they arrived at the tea stall, other than tea, there were also some snacks to eat. Why are you looking for Song Ming? He's a wastrel. He doesn't do his job all day long, but he likes beauties. Ning Lang curled his lips. He did not have a deep relationship with Song Ming, but he had heard of his reputation. It could be said that he was a local ruffian born in a wealthy family. Duan Yi knew the identity of Fengjiu's mentor. He also knew that they were going to look for Song Ming, so he did not feel anything. He did not have a deep relationship with Song Ming, but in the past, he often heard of his reputation as a wastrel in the academy. He paid attention to him only because he, Ning Lang, Song Ming and Luo Fei were listed as the 4 big thorns in the academy. No mentor dared to teach them, and no one dared to offend them. Chapter 983. He was actually very repulsed by the 8 great empires. His family was the royal family here, but it was said that they were only a small family there. He didn't want to go there, so he didn't pay much attention to his cultivation and didn't return to the academy. He didn't plan to be chosen by the nebulous sect in the future. If he was chosen, then he had to go there. He could be called a little tyrant here, but if he went to those places, he would have to be humble. He didn't want to do that. Quick, quick, Song Ming is gambling in front again. He lost a lot of money yesterday. Let's go and take a look, a few men said and went forward together. Fengjiu and the other 2 who were sitting at the tea stall heard this and their expressions changed slightly. It was said that Song Ming, in addition to his love for beauties and debauchery, was also very good at gambling. How could he lose? Let's go and take a look too. Ning Lang looked at the other 2 and asked. Yes. Fengjiu nodded. After paying for the tea, he got up and followed the crowd. Some distance ahead, an alley was crowded with people. There was a square table in the middle of the crowd. A young man in embroidered clothes sat there with his legs crossed. There was a servant behind him. There was a dice cup in front of him. There were 2 words written on the table, big and small. There was also a lot of money on it. Quick, 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 place your bets. He shouted and knocked on the table with one hand. Many people placed their bets again. Most of them bet on the big side. After everyone settled down, he opened the dice cup. When they saw the numbers inside, everyone was shocked. How can it be small? I've already opened many small games. I've already lost a lot of money on the big side. I'll definitely open big this time. Hee hee, I'm sorry, everyone. My luck is still pretty good today. I won again. He laughed. The servant behind him went forward to take the money and stood behind him obediently. Song Ming picked up the dice on the table and shook it. After putting it down, he shouted again, place your bets. Place your bets. I'll bet on big. I'll bet on big too. I'll definitely open big. I don't believe I won't open this side. Everyone gambled and their eyes turned red. They didn't believe in heresy and took out their money to bet on the bigger side. Fengjiu and the other two watched from where they were. They saw those people shouting and hollering, but when it was time to open the first round, they would open smaller rounds. After a few rounds, it was obvious that they had lost until their eyes were red. Finally, someone believed him and shouted, "Keep opening small. I'll buy small for this round. I'll buy a small one too." Another person followed, and in the blink of an eye, he saw a pile of gold and silver coins on the small side. However, when the plate was opened, the surroundings fell silent, and then people started cursing. Song Ming. Are you trying to cheat? If we buy a big one, we will open a small one. If we buy a small one, we will open a big one. You must be cheating. Yes, you must have cheated. Give us back our money. All of them were angry and went forward to snatch the money. However, at this moment, Song Ming snorted heavily and slammed his hands on the table. The aura of a cultivator in the late stage of foundation establishment swept out and instantly pushed the people around him away. He stood up with a sullen face and stared at the people who had fallen to the ground. He snorted coldly, "How dare you steal my money? I think you've got guts." As soon as he finished speaking, he motioned for the servant behind him to put away the money on the table. Chapter 984. Right after he said that, his gaze fell on the three people at the side. One of them was wearing red clothes that fluttered in the wind. He had a handsome face and an outstanding temperament. The corners of his good-looking lips held an indescribable smile. For some reason, he looked a bit strange in Mo Tianga's eyes. Next to him was a purple-clothed youth and a finely clothed youth. The former had a baby face and his chin was slightly raised, revealing a bit of arrogance. The latter had a round figure and a pleasant face. His small eyes were narrowed into a line. Seeing that the three people's gazes were on him, he crossed his arms and asked, "What are you guys staring at me for?" Song Ming. Fengjiu's gaze fell on him, sizing him up thoroughly. He was in the late stage of the foundation building realm and was about 18 or 19 years old. His clothes were loose, and he was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed and his legs slightly trembling. He looked like a slovenly ruffian. According to the information given to her by the academy, Mo Tianga knew that Song Ming's family was a bit complicated. His mother died of illness when he was 5 years old. In the same year, she found out that his father had another woman and 2 sons. One was the same age as him and the other was a year younger. The year his mother passed away, his father married that woman. He was just a 5-year-old child, but he was able to stop his mother's clansmen from inciting his father to marry that woman and become Madame Song. Under the pressure of the clan elders and his mother's relatives, in the end, that woman could only be accepted as a second wife and was called Second Madam. Even his 2 sons could only be born of concubines. Perhaps it was because of his family's environment, but his behavior had been unruly since he was a child. Fighting, gambling, and beauties were all involved. However, his talent was outstanding since he was a child. In addition, he had the support of his mother's clansmen and the protection of the clan elders. It could be said that even in his family, he was a tyrant. No one could discipline him. Mo Tianga looked at him but didn't say anything. That was because when Song Ming caught a glimpse of a few people coming from not far away, he immediately took the Qiankuan bag that contained money from the attendant's hand and ran away. "You go back first. I'm going to have a chat with the beauties." "Young master, don't run. Clan head wants you to go back." When those people saw him running away, they hurriedly shouted and chased after him. Fengjiu glanced at those people. 2 of them were golden core cultivators, and the few behind them were great spirit masters. It seemed that it wouldn't take long for them to catch Song Ming. "I've seen Song Ming from afar for a day or 2, but it looks like he doesn't remember us." As Duanyi spoke, he looked at Fengjiu and asked, "How do you plan to take him away?" "His family's affairs were troublesome. He probably wants to stay here and cause trouble for his dissolute father, and won't follow us to the Hell Mountain Range." Fengjiu glanced at him and said leisurely, "You also know that all of you are troublesome?" Hearing this, Duanyi snorted and looked away. How were they not worrisome? They just didn't want to be restrained. Let's find a place to stay. Since we're already here, why don't we find a time to visit the Song family? Ning Lang said as he walked outside to take a look. Let's go to the front and have a look. There should be an inn up ahead. Let's go. As she spoke, she walked forward with them, planning to find an inn to stay in first. However, after entering the inn, they booked 3 rooms and were led upstairs by the innkeeper. Just as they were about to go upstairs, they heard a young man's surprised voice behind them. Chapter 985. Fengjiu looked back and saw a young man in embroidered robes standing in front of Tan Yun. He looked at the little white ball of Tan Yun in surprise. If Tan Yun had not been glaring at him unkindly, he probably would have reached out to carry Tan Yun. I'm not selling. Fengjiu called out and Tan Yun leaped to her feet. I'll pay a high price. Sell it to me. The young man said and came to Fengjiu's side. Fengjiu could not help but smile when she heard that. She glanced at the young man. Do I look like I'm in need of people? The young man looked him up and down. Only then did he notice this person's extraordinary aura. He saw that his clothes were all of high quality, especially the rainbow-colored feather at his waist that was half covered by his outer robes. It was even more dazzling. Then I'll give you something in exchange. He said in a different way. Fengjiu ignored him. She glanced at him coldly and walked up the stairs with Tan Yun. When the youth was swept by that gaze, he felt a chill run up from the soles of his feet to his heart. However, when he saw Duanyi go upstairs, he wanted to say something, but Duanyi reached out and pushed him impolitely. What are you doing? Are you asking for a beating? Why are you pushing me? The young man was furious and glared at the baby-faced Duanyi. Compared to the young man in Red's cold gaze, the baby-faced young man did not have that kind of frightening aura. Hence, he was not afraid. Stay away from us. Duanyi snorted coldly and left behind a warning before turning around and walking upstairs. However, at this moment, his robes were stepped on, almost causing him to fall forward. Ah! I'm sorry, I accidentally stepped on your robes. The young man said apologetically. However, his face was full of provocation. Duanyi was not one to be taken advantage of. When he saw that the young man dared to step on his robes, his baby-faced face immediately darkened. He raised his leg and gave the young man a kick without warning. Bang! Hiss! The kick landed on the young man's chest and sent him flying. He fell to the ground in pain and could not stand up for a long time. Third young master. The guards outside quickly walked in and helped him up. 2 of them pulled out the long swords at their waists and attacked Duanyi and Ning Lang. How dare you hit my young master? You're courting death. Ning Lang was staring at Duanyi's robe that had been stepped on. Seeing that there was a footprint on it, he was about to laugh out loud when he saw Duanyi turn around and kick the young man out. He opened his mouth in shock. While he was in a daze, a few guards rushed in from outside. Some helped the young man up, while some drew their swords and slashed at them. He was so shocked that he suddenly came back to his senses. Why are you slashing me? I didn't kick your young master. He shouted as he dodged. At the same time, he threw out a punch and hit one of the guards in the eye. Ah! My eyes! Damn it! You 2 brats! The other 2 guards also rushed forward and attacked with their long swords. The light of the blade and the shadow of the sword flashed and landed in the inn. Some of the ordinary guests were so shocked that they quickly dodged. However, some cultivators remained seated and watched the fight with interest. The innkeeper of the inn hid behind the counter and looked at the messy first floor. His face was pale with worry as he shouted, Masters, masters, stop fighting. Stop fighting. If you continue fighting, my little inn will be destroyed. Ah! Chapter 986. Fengjiu, who was in the guest room upstairs, couldn't help but shake her head when she heard the commotion and cries downstairs. It wasn't peaceful anywhere, especially when she brought along a few troublemakers. Ning Lang wasn't very strong, but he was smart and had many thoughts. Duan Yi could fight against a golden core cultivator, so she didn't have to worry about the two of them being at a disadvantage. Thus, she rubbed her neck and ordered Tun Yun to watch the door while she went inside to rest on the bed. Downstairs, a few great spirit master guards were unable to gain an advantage over Duan Yi and Ning Lang, so they could only dejectedly help their third young master, who had been beaten black and blue, slip away. However, before they could leave the inn, they were blocked by Ning Lang, who was smiling and squinting his eyes. "Hee, you can leave, but shouldn't you deal with the compensation first before leaving? You guys broke it." The young man glared at him, gritting his teeth in anger. "What do you mean we broke it? You guys were the ones who broke it." "Don't you think so, shopkeeper?" Ning Lang smiled and looked at the shopkeeper, who had just popped his head out from a corner. The shopkeeper wiped his cold sweat and looked at Duan Yi and Ning Lang, then at the young man and the guards. He didn't know where the former came from, but his skills were extraordinary. The latter was the third young master of the Song family in the city, so he didn't dare to offend him. After hesitating for a while, he said carefully, Then why don't both of you compensate me a little, Before he could finish, he was interrupted by Ning Lang's voice. "What? You want me to compensate you? Shopkeeper, are you kidding me? Are you sure your eyes aren't under your feet? They were clearly the ones who brought people here to cause trouble, using knives and swords to break your tables and chairs, and you actually want this young master to compensate as well? In your dreams. It's good enough that I didn't ask you to compensate me for the shock, but you actually want me to compensate you? Do you think it's easy to earn my money?" "Huh?" The chubby young man glared at the door, blocking the young man and the others from leaving. At the same time, he glared at the shopkeeper and lectured him. His expression seemed to say that if you dare to make me pay, I will fight you to the death. Seeing this, the shopkeeper felt guilty and didn't know what to do. It was true that the people from the Song clan had used their weapons, but if the two of them hadn't lifted the chair and table and smashed it at him, they wouldn't have been chopped into pieces, and the first floor wouldn't have been destroyed like this. The shopkeeper couldn't help but look at the people from the Song clan, and for a moment, he was very nervous. "What are you waiting for? Pay up." Ning Lang glared at the people in front of him. "Or do you think you haven't beaten me enough? You want another fight?" The young man clenched his teeth. The pain on his face made him swallow his anger. He said to a guard, "Pay up." When a guard saw this, he hurriedly took out some money to compensate the shopkeeper. Only then did he support his young master and leave. "Little guy, you're talking about money with your Lord Ning? You should be thankful that I didn't make you pay with your underwear facing the sky." Ning Lang snorted and said to the shopkeeper, "Prepare a few dishes for us and send them upstairs." "Yes, yes." The shopkeeper hurriedly responded and watched as the two of them walked upstairs. On the first floor, some cultivators sitting in the corner couldn't help but feel a little surprised when they saw this scene. They didn't expect that the two young men could actually beat the guards and that young man, and even make them pay. Chapter 987. However, the people on the first floor guessed wrong. The youth did indeed complain after returning home. However, Master Song was having a headache about his eldest son, Song Ming, and had no time to care about his youngest son. Therefore, after hearing the guard's words, he only told his son not to cause trouble and did not say anything else. In the west courtyard, a beautiful woman was looking at the jewelry sent by the jewelry shop in the courtyard. She picked up a necklace and asked a maid to put it on her. After looking at the effect, she heard the sound of kicking and cursing outside. "Go and see what's going on," the beautiful woman said slowly. Her voice was soft and gentle, like a gentle and delicate beauty. Her appearance and figure were indeed so. Even though she was already in her 30s, she looked like a woman in her 20s. This beautiful woman was the second madam of the Song family. Madam, the third young master is sulking outside. I don't know who hit him, but his face is full of injuries. This servant wanted to apply medicine for him, but he didn't let me. Hit by someone? The second madam was startled. She put down the jewelry in her hand and walked out. When she came to the courtyard, she saw her son's face covered in bruises. She couldn't help but feel distressed. Who dared to hit you like this? Quick, get the medicine for the third young master to apply. I don't want it. He pushed the second madam away and said angrily, I don't want it. If you're hurt, you have to apply medicine. How can you not apply medicine? Don't throw a tantrum. Quick, mother will apply it for you. She looked at her son with distress. She took the medicine from the maid and was about to apply it for him. I won't. I won't. He angrily pushed the medicine in the second madam's hand to the ground and broke it. Seeing this, a trace of worry appeared on the second madam's delicate face. She asked, then tell mother, who hit you? Don't tell me it was your eldest brother who dragged you to the martial arts field and beat you like this again. It wasn't him. It was those two stinky brats. They beat me up and even made me pay for the tavern. I couldn't take this lying down, but father said he was busy with big brother's matter and told me not to cause trouble. He wouldn't stand up for me. He said hatefully, his eyes filled with unwillingness. No matter how much his father doted on him, he couldn't compare to his elder brother. His matters would never be as important as his elder brother's. Just because he was born of a concubine, just because his mother wasn't the wife of the head of the Song family. Hearing this, the second madam's eyes flickered, and she said softly, since your father has said so, don't think about it anymore, lest you make your father unhappy. Big brother is always causing trouble outside. When has father ever said anything about him? If big brother was bullied outside, father would help him out. He said angrily, his fists clenched tightly. The more he thought about it, the harder it was for him to get over it. Don't always compare yourself with your big brother. Your big brother is the son of the first wife. Your father has his reasons for valuing him. Just say these words here. Don't say it outside and let others hear it. Otherwise, your father and big brother will be unhappy if they know. She patted his hand and said, all right, you can go back first. Don't mention it again. But go. She gestured and called two people to send him back to the courtyard. After he left, she sat in the courtyard. A faint light flashed through her eyes as she said, call the guards who went out with the third young master today. Yes. The maid replied and went out to call them. Chapter 988. Light footsteps brushed past the roof of the inn. In the pitch-black room, Fengjiu, who was sound asleep on the bed, opened her eyes when she heard movement on the roof. Her clear eyes were as dazzling as the stars in the night. Tun Yun, who was lying at the door, straightened up and walked to the bedside to look at its master who had already woken up. Fengjiu only waved her hand gently, indicating for it to lie down. It then lay back down on the ground and closed its eyes. She did not get up. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened. She wanted to see how vigilant Duan Yi and Ning Lang were. These two brats had fought with someone during the day. Were they sleeping soundly at night? Or were they still vigilant? In the other two rooms, Duan Yi and Ning Lang both woke up when someone landed on the roof. Duan Yi was already vigilant, while Ning Lang had suffered a loss once. He no longer dared to be careless. The movement was extremely small, and the aura was hidden very well. It was obvious that the person who came was not a Foundation establishment cultivator, but a Golden Core cultivator. Was it someone sent by the Song clan? Such sneakiness was truly despicable. During the day, they had fought with someone from the Song clan. Tonight, they came to deal with them. Even a fool would know that it was someone from the Song clan. However, it was one thing to come out in the open, but to come out in the dark like this really made people look down on them. However, as they lay quietly on the bed with their eyes closed, they realized that there was no movement for a long time. They could not help but feel strange. Could it be that they were not from the Song clan? Just as they were thinking, they smelled a faint fragrance. When they smelled that fragrance, the two of them cursed inwardly. Just as they were about to jump up, their vision turned black and they lost consciousness. Just as the two of them lost consciousness, a figure came in from outside the door. The person stabbed a needle dipped in medicine into their arm and then left. In the other room, Fengjiu was also listening for the commotion. Nothing happened for a long time until a faint scent permeated the room. Her heart skipped a beat. She used her spiritual sense to instruct Tun Yun to behave like a defenseless pet and act according to the situation. Not long after, the door opened from the outside. Two black figures walked in. One of them picked up Tun Yun, who was lying on the ground, while the other went forward. Just as he was about to stab Tun Yun with a needle dipped in medicine, Fengjiu, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. He reached out and bent the needle. Crack! Ah! The sound of bones breaking rang out in the pitch-black room. The cultivator's cry of pain suddenly stopped, as if his voice was stuck in his throat. He only felt the needle pierce into his body. Soon after, he collapsed powerlessly. This sudden scene startled the other black-clothed man who was holding the little beast. Just as he was about to retreat quickly, the little beast in his arms suddenly growled. With a flash of light, it transformed from a small pet into a huge and powerful mythological beast. With a claw, it pressed down on the shocked gold core stage cultivator, making him unable to move. Hiss! You! The golden core cultivator who had been pressed to the ground by Tun Yun, who had returned to his original form, sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at Fengjiu and the divine beast in shock. His voice stopped at the same time, and after a moment of movement, the room returned to normal. It was as if the movement just now was an illusion. Chapter 989. Is this Patriarch Song's idea? She raised her eyebrows and stared at the cultivator who was being pressed to the ground by Tun Yun. The cultivator was trembling all over and had no strength to get up. He didn't say anything and just looked at the red-clothed youth in front of him in horror. You don't want to talk? It's okay, I can take you back to the Song family to ask for an explanation. Don't even think about dying. If you die, I'll feed you to my little beast. She spoke unhurriedly and glanced at the person on the ground. She wasn't afraid that he would kill himself because she had already seen that this person was afraid of death. Otherwise, he would have killed himself the moment he was caught. He wouldn't have waited until now. Watch them. Fengjiu ordered Tun Yun to watch over the two of them while he walked out. He first went to Duan Ye's room to check on his condition. This idiot. She couldn't help but curse in a low voice. He had really fallen into a trap. She immediately took out a silver needle and pierced Duan Ye's acupuncture points to wake him up. Unexpectedly, as soon as he woke up, his fist, which contained a fierce hidden force, was swung towards her face. She quickly blocked it and said angrily, "It's me." When he came back to his senses and heard Fengjiu's voice, Duan Ye was surprised. Why are you here? As he spoke, he quickly sat up and felt that there was nothing wrong with his body. He couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness you're fine. I thought I had fallen into a trap. You're fine. Fengjiu glanced at him with a strange expression. He stood up and flicked his robe. You think you're fine? Hearing this, Duan Ye's heart sank. He had a bad feeling. He said, I seem to have smelled something and fainted. Now that I've woken up, I'm really fine. Am I not? Let's go next door and check on Ning Lang first. As she spoke, she turned and walked out. Duan Ye hurriedly followed behind her. When they arrived next door, he saw that Ning Lang was also unconscious on the bed. He watched as Fengjiu stepped forward. After taking his pulse, he pierced his acupuncture points with a silver needle to wake him up. Ning Lang slowly opened his eyes. When he saw Fengjiu sitting by the bed, he was stunned. Fengjiu? Why are you in my room? He sat up. Seeing that Duan Yi was also there, he couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. You're all here. That's good. Let me tell you. Have you heard the sound of it? Since you already knew, why did you still allow yourself to fall into the trap and put yourself in danger? Are you tired of living? Why didn't you know how to react in the first place? She looked at the two of them, her voice cold and sharp. The two of them were silent for a while. They looked at each other and then at Feng Nine, waiting for him to continue. From the moment she woke up, she saw the anger on his face. It was obvious that something was wrong, too. She crossed her arms and leaned against the bed. Her handsome expression was cold, and a chill flashed across her eyes. She suddenly felt her hands itch for this kind of vicious person who easily took people's lives. Hearing her words, Duan Ye's face darkened. His whole body exuded a bloodthirsty killing intent. Ning Lang's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Chapter 990. I also want to know who did this. Duan Ye's voice was cold and murderous. His doll-like face was filled with a bloodthirsty expression. Fengjiu's gaze swept past the two of them. The two golden core cultivators are still in my room. Let's go. Let's go and ask them. As she spoke, she turned and walked out, heading towards her guest room. When the two of them heard this, they were stunned. Two golden core cultivators had been defeated by him. Puzzled, they followed him out to his room. As soon as they entered, the two of them jumped in fright and nearly cried out in alarm. In the room, a ferocious beast that looked like a tiger and a lion exuded a powerful aura. It made them unable to take a step forward for a long time. That was a divine beast. It was actually a divine beast. And they actually sensed a trace of little Tun Yun's aura from this terrifyingly powerful divine beast. The beast's eyes were even more frightening than Tun Yun's when he was shrunk. The bloodthirsty and ferocious eyes were filled with a terrifying murderous intent. Just one look was enough to make the two of them tremble. Especially when they saw a golden core cultivator lying on the ground under the divine beast's claws. He seemed to be gasping for breath. His face was pale and his aura was weak, as if he would die at any moment. As for the other side, he was lying unconscious on the ground. The two golden core cultivators were being guarded by the divine beast. Even if two more people came, they would not be able to escape, let alone just the two of them. He's over there. You can interrogate him. She gestured. She did not go forward but sat down at the table and poured herself a cup of tea. Duan Yi and Ning Lang looked at each other as their lives were at stake. They walked forward and looked at the golden core cultivator who was being stepped on by Tun Yun. They asked coldly, "Who ordered you to use such a despicable method?" The golden core cultivator was panting as if he could not breathe. He looked at the two of them but did not speak. Tun Yun saw the two of them and retreated. At the same time, he shrank into a small ball like a small pet without any attack power. He came to Fengjiu and sat down beside her. You won't speak. Duan Yi took out his long sword and pointed it at his crotch. Are you going to speak or not? As soon as the voice came out, his long sword went in a little deeper. With just a light stroke, a hole was cut in the pants. Fear and nervousness appeared in the eyes of the golden core cultivator, who had been pressed to the ground by Tun Yun. No, don't. I'll talk. Without a doubt, compared to the golden core cultivator who was afraid of death and kept his secret tightly, he was more afraid of becoming an androgynous person. Hence, when he felt a sudden sense of danger, when he felt a chill in his pants and cold sweat broke out all over his body, he chose to speak of the mastermind. It's second madam. We're second madam's people. Third young master was beaten up by you and the master was dealing with first young master's matter. He only told the third young master not to cause trouble. third young master could not take this lying down and begged second madam. Second madam asked us to drug you. She did not want others to suspect the Song family, so she gave us a slow-acting poison that will only take effect after 3 days. By then, even if you die, no one will suspect the Song family. This is what we know. I've told you everything. Please let me live. Chapter 991. Hearing this, Duan Yi and Ning Lang's expressions changed. Second madam. The woman that Master Ning had outside? It was said that that woman could only be considered the second madam in the Song family, and her son could only be the son of a concubine. However, it was said that this woman had always been very gentle and weak. After many years, her status in the Song family had also risen. Unexpectedly, she was a two-faced person with such a vicious mind. Well, if she didn't have some tricks, how could she give birth to a son of the same age as Song Ming? How could she be brought into the family after Song Ming's mother died? If it weren't for Song Ming's mother's family stopping her, she would have been the madam of the Song family now. It was reasonable for such a scheming woman to say that she was the one who sent people to do tonight's matter. Because the young man who was beaten up by them today was her biological son. If Master Song didn't show up, how could she, as his mother, remain calm? However, before she made her move, she had not inquired about their origins. How could they be so easily taken by anyone who wanted to take their lives? Since she couldn't take their lives silently, they had to think about how to repay her. Feng Jiu, who was sitting at the table, supported her chin with one hand as she listened to the Golden Core cultivator's words. She didn't show any reaction on her face, but she was already thinking about how to deal with this second madam. She had never been soft-hearted towards people who came to bully her. Especially when it was just a fight between young people. Why should she interfere? She even used such a shameful and insidious method. It was really shameless. Duan Yi glanced at the two people on the ground, and killing intent flashed in his eyes. The next moment, he raised the sharp sword in his hand, and as the cold light flashed, blood splashed out. The conscious person was killed before he could even beg for mercy. As for the other person, he breathed his last in a coma. Ning Lang, take care of the bodies, Duan Yi said, then walked to Feng Jiu and asked, can you cure our poison? Feng Jiu glanced at the two of them and said, come and get the antidote tomorrow morning. Hearing this, the two of them were relieved. Duan Yi asked again, what do you think about that woman? Thoughts? I don't have any thoughts about such a vicious woman, but since we've already formed a grudge tonight, it doesn't seem right if I don't return the favor. She sneered as she tapped her fingers on the table, a cold light flashing in her eyes. Seeing this, Duan Yi and Ning Lang exchanged glances. They knew that there was no need for them to do anything, as he would handle it himself. Moreover, they believed that Feng Jiu would definitely be more effective than them. Thus, the two of them dealt with the corpse and cleaned up the bloodstains on the ground. They went back to their rooms to rest and waited for dawn to come back to collect the antidote. With the ghost doctor by their side, even if they were poisoned, the two of them were not that worried. The second madam of the Song family had suddenly made a move because she hadn't investigated the identities of the three of them. They only knew that she would soon regret her evil scheme tonight. When the two of them returned to their room, Feng Jiu began to concoct the antidote for them. Even though it was highly toxic, it was not difficult for her. With one bottle of antidote, the poison in their bodies would be cured by tomorrow. Chapter 992. In the black market, deep in the night, when he heard that someone had arrived with a level 1 black token, the black market president, who was sound asleep, could only quickly get up. After getting dressed, he quickly went to the front living room, accompanied by two black market elders. Once they entered the living room, they saw a handsome youth in red sitting inside. When they saw the youth's face, the three couldn't help but be startled, then they were pleasantly surprised. We didn't know it was the ghost doctor, please forgive us for not welcoming you. The president stepped in, smiling as he apologized. Feng Jiu, who had taken a sip of tea, put down the teacup in his hand and looked at the newcomers. The middle-aged man and the two elders stood up and cupped his hands in greeting. President, two elders. When the two elders saw this, they also smiled and hurriedly returned the greeting. Ghost Doctor, please sit. Everyone sat down and dismissed the attendants. The president and the two elders looked at each other, then asked, I wonder why the ghost doctor has come to visit so late at night? As the saying goes, one doesn't visit a temple without a cause, let alone the ghost doctor who had always been low-key. If she didn't have something to ask of them, she probably wouldn't have come to the black market. I need information on the second wife of the Song family head. She directly stated her purpose, looking at them meaningfully, some information that outsiders can't find. Hearing this, the three were startled. The second wife of the Song family head? Could it be that that woman offended the ghost doctor? Thinking of this, the three looked at each other, then nodded. Since the ghost doctor has asked, we naturally won't hide it. I won't hide it from the ghost doctor. In the places where the black market is located, there will be information on the local families and some important people. It can be said that we can gather information on 3 generations of their ancestors. Otherwise, our black market wouldn't have such a large area of influence in each place. The president smiled and said, naturally, we can't take out the information in the depths of the black market, but to our own people, it doesn't matter. He stood up and said to Fengjiu, Ghost Doctor, please wait for a moment, I'll go get it. Saying this, he bowed to Fengjiu and turned to leave. Ghost Doctor, how did the second madam of the Song clan offend you? The two elders asked. Seeing this, Fengjiu briefly explained the situation. I see. The two of them nodded and said, this second madam of the Song clan has some tricks up her sleeves. She has also raised quite a number of people in secret. This is something that even the Song clan head doesn't know about. If she hadn't offended me, I wouldn't have bothered with her. It's just a pity that she secretly used a vicious move because of a fight between a few youths. If I don't teach her an unforgettable lesson, she'll really think that everyone can be bullied. Fengjiu's expression was cold. Originally, she wanted to only take Song Ming away from the Song family. Who would have thought that someone would dare to poison the people around her in front of her? Did they really think that she, Fengjiu, was a pushover? Ha ha ha, actually, the ghost doctor doesn't have to do it herself. One of the elders smiled and stroked his beard. Looking at Fengjiu, he said, there are plenty of people who want her life. It's just that they can't get hold of that woman's weakness. They're here. I've kept the ghost doctor waiting. Chapter 993. Fengjiu received it and opened it to take a look. Page after page of information recorded what the second madam of the Song clan had done. The information was so accurate that it even recorded the time and date of the incident. She looked through the pages, and the more she looked, the brighter her eyes became. With this thing, she didn't need to do anything, and it would be enough to consign the second madam of the Song clan to eternal damnation. She kept the information in her hands and handed it to the president, saying, President, can I trouble you to send this information to Song Ming's mother's clan? If Song Ming's mother's clan received this information, they wouldn't give the second madam any time to breathe. Their daughter had died, but not from an illness, but from a hidden poison. This poison came from the hands of the second madam. She believed that if they knew the truth, even the Song clan's patriarch wouldn't be able to protect the second madam. Of course. The president replied with a smile and took the document. Don't worry, ghost doctor. I'll send someone to handle this matter now. I believe you'll see a reaction by daybreak. As he spoke, he called out to someone outside and instructed them to hand over the document. All right, then I'll have to trouble you. She nodded and got up to leave. The three of them sent her out of the black market. Watching the red figure disappear into the night, one of the elders shook his head and sighed, this second madam of the Song clan is too blind. Who could she have offended? Offending the ghost doctor? The ghost doctor's whereabouts have always been a mystery. She also keeps a low profile and doesn't let anyone know her identity. It's normal that the Song clan woman doesn't know. I can only say that her luck has run out. Otherwise, why would she choose to make a move on the ghost doctor? That's right. Even if she didn't have this information, if the ghost doctor wanted to deal with her, she could have killed her in 100 different ways. At this point, one of the elders coughed lightly and said, "Some time ago, news came from the Star Cloud black market. It said that an alchemist from the School of Stars and Clouds went to steal his beauty pill. The ghost doctor stuffed the beauty pill into that alchemist's mouth. That alchemist immediately turned from a man to a woman. Until now, he hasn't recovered. Only the ghost doctor can be so willful." After a beauty-nourishing pill was consumed by an imperial concubine of a first-tier country, the news spread like wildfire. Right now, the price on the market has increased by who knows how many times. If those people knew that the ghost doctor once so willfully stuffed a beauty-nourishing pill into the mouth of a pill master, their hearts would probably ache to death. The Empire's headquarters are paying a lot of attention to the ghost doctor. Some time ago, they even issued a black order saying that anyone who disrespects the ghost doctor will be punished severely. Moreover, it said that the higher-ups are already looking forward to when the ghost doctor will go to the Empire. She advanced to become a golden core cultivator in a 2-star academy. This news has already spread within our Star Cloud black market. I believe that it won't be long before she can go to the Empire. Moreover, she is not an ordinary person. In these small countries, she can't be trapped. The three people chatted at the entrance until, after a while, they turned around and walked inside. As for Fengjiu, she did not directly return to the inn. Instead, she took advantage of the night to quietly come to the Song residence. She hid her aura, and her whole person blended into the night. Silently, like a ghost, she swept through the night and easily entered the inner courtyard of the Song residence. Chapter 994. The second madam of the Song mansion was the only mistress in the mansion. However, because she was not the madam of the master, she could only be considered a concubine at best. Therefore, she did not have the qualifications to stay in the east courtyard. In the Song mansion, the master of the Song mansion lived in the east courtyard, which was also the main courtyard. The south courtyard was the second largest courtyard after the east courtyard and was lived by Song Ming. As for the west courtyard, it was divided into 2 parts. One side was occupied by the second madam and the other by her 2 sons. The north courtyard was used to entertain guests. Therefore, it was easy for her to find the second madam's courtyard. Perhaps the second madam was not worried about the guards of the Song mansion, or perhaps she thought that no one would dare to come to the Song mansion. Therefore, other than the 2 teams of night guards, there were only 2 guards guarding the courtyard door. Seeing this, she entered from the back and quietly snuck into the room through the window. Her body was as light as a cat. After landing steadily, she leaned slightly to the side and hid in the dark. Looking at the figure on the bed, she thought to herself, "This woman is proficient in poisons. How should I deal with her?" Just as she was thinking, she saw the woman turn over and a sleepy voice came from the gauze curtain, "Rui, pour me a cup of water." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes moved slightly. She flashed to the outer room and took out a pill. She crushed it into powder and sprinkled it into the water bottle. This pill was colorless and odorless. Even if she was proficient in poisons, she would not be able to detect anything. The maid who waited outside at night pushed the door open and lit the lamp. She poured the water and brought it forward. "Madam, water." From inside the gauze curtain, a pair of soft, snow-white hands reached out. After receiving the water, she drank it in a few mouthfuls. Then, she handed the cup back and asked with a lazy and sleepy voice, "What time is it?" "Madam, it's just past midnight." The maid respectfully replied. You may leave." She waved her hand, indicating for the maid to leave. Just as she was about to go back to sleep, she heard a voice from outside. "Greetings, family head." The 2 guards bowed respectfully. When the woman in the room heard this, she was startled and hurriedly said, "Master is here?" As she spoke, she had already stood up to greet him. After hiding in the dark and seeing her drink the water, she went outside and put the antidote in the water bottle to prevent others from discovering it. Just as he was about to leave, he heard a voice coming from outside. He couldn't help but be startled. He immediately hid in the dark again. "Master, why are you here so late?" Second Madam's black hair hung loosely over her shoulders. She was only wearing a dudu and a light muslin covering her body. Her snow-white skin and alluring spring scenery were faintly discernible. Her slender waist and exquisite and graceful figure were even more seductive and charming in the night. Her bare feet were like jade as she lightly walked forward with a bit of surprise and a bit of a young girl's posture. Seeing this, Song family head's eyes darkened. There seemed to be a ball of fire dancing in his eyes, and his eyes became deep. He waved his hand to signal the maidservant to leave and reached out to embrace the delicate woman who was walking towards him. His big hand embraced that slender, jade-like skin that was warm and soft like a piece of beautiful jade, making him reluctant to let go. His big hand tightened and squeezed the woman's ample bosom into his embrace. His big hand slowly moved down and caressed. "Lien, why did you get off the bed barefoot? The cold air on the ground is not good for the body." His deep voice was hoarse. The moment he spoke, he had already picked her up by the waist and walked towards the bed. Second Madam's face was filled with shyness. She reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her head in his chest. Chapter 995. She had originally planned to leave, but now that Song family head had come in, she couldn't leave even if she wanted to. Then should she stay and watch their erotic show? Thinking of this, her eyes moved, but she decided to forget about it. A middle-aged man with a bit of weight wasn't much to look at. It was better for her to hide here and look for an opportunity to leave. In the room, the woman's delicate voice sounded, accompanied by the man's panting. She narrowed her eyes and glanced at the tent. She could faintly see two figures overlapping in the tent, and the sound of their panting was filled with ecstasy. After waiting in the room for nearly an hour, she couldn't help but rub her chin. She looked at the bed that was creaking from the shaking, as well as the panting and moaning coming from their bodies. She couldn't help but think to herself, it's the middle of the night, but these two people are playing quite intensely. Taking advantage of the fact that the two were too busy to pay attention to anything else, she quietly slipped out and lightly jumped out of the room. After a few breaths, she hid herself in the shadows outside, avoiding the night patrols, and lightly leaped out of the Song residence. Outside, she turned around to look at the Song residence, and the corners of her lips curled up. She wanted to know what Song family head's expression would be when he woke up and saw that the beautiful woman in his arms had turned into an old woman with a face full of wrinkles. She walked towards the inn. There were very few people on the road, and the sky was hazy, but some small stalls had already begun to open, preparing for business at dawn. When she passed by a small stall, she smelled the strong scent of soy milk and couldn't help but stop. "Is this soy milk?" She looked at a middle-aged couple and asked. "It's tofu pudding. The water is still boiling, and it's not ready yet." The woman replied. "How long will it take before we can eat?" She rubbed her stomach and sat down at their table. "It'll be ready in another hour. Young master can sit for a while, drink some tea, or eat some snacks. These are all homemade snacks," the woman said as she brought some snacks and tea to Fengjiu. Seeing this, Fengjiu sat there and ate. In any case, she couldn't go back to sleep now, so she might as well wait until dawn to call the two of them and go to the Song residence to watch the show. After making up her mind, she sat there with her chin in her hand. When the sky gradually brightened, she brought back 2 portions of tofu pudding for the 2 people in the inn. Other than the tofu pudding, she also brought back some snacks made by the couple from the stall. When she returned to the inn, she happened to see the 2 people coming down from upstairs. "You didn't come back last night?" The 2 of them looked at Fengjiu who had just entered and asked in surprise. drink the antidote. She looked at the two of them and asked. Because it was still early, there was almost no one on the first floor of the inn. Yes, Tunyun told us. The two nodded and came to Fengjiu's side. They looked him up and down and asked, "You didn't secretly go to the Song family, did you? Come and go as he pleases. No one would have noticed." The Song clan master was a nascent soul stage cultivator, and there were also nascent soul stage cultivators in their residence. He was only at the Aurus core stage. If he went there, he would definitely be noticed. However, if he didn't go to the Song clan, they really couldn't figure out where he had run off to for the entire night. "I brought breakfast for the two of you on the way back. Here, hurry up and eat. After that, we'll go and watch the show." She placed the food in her hand on the table and gestured for the two of them to hurry up and eat. At the same time, she called upstairs, "Tunyun, come down." Chapter 996. After Duan Yi and Ning Lang glanced at Fengjiu, they sat down at the table and ate the breakfast he brought back for them. As they ate, the two of them pondered. Did he go to the Song family to watch the show? Why did he go to the Song family? Curious, they ate their breakfast much faster. After hastily finishing their food, they wiped their mouths and stood up. "We're done eating. Let's go." Fengjiu was patting Tun Yun's head and stroking its soft fur when he heard their voices. He turned his head slightly and saw that the two of them had stood up and were looking at him. Seeing this, he smiled and said, "Don't be in such a hurry. Sit down. I'll take your pulse and see how your bodies are doing after taking the medicine." Hearing this, the two of them sat down and placed their hands on the table. He reached out and placed his fingers on their pulses. Looking at his fair and slender fingers, the two of them felt their hearts skip a beat. Why were his hands so thin? So fair? Moreover, his fingers were so sharp, just like a woman's slender hands. They thought to themselves, but didn't dare to show it on their faces. If they said that he had a pair of women's hands, he would probably be angry. After all, no man would be willing to be treated as a woman. After Fengjiu took their pulses, he retracted his hand after a long while and nodded. Yes, the poison is dormant. It won't erupt all at once. Therefore, it's easier to remove the poison. His sleeves moved slightly and took out a medicine bottle from his space. He poured out 2 pills. "There are 2 blood-cleansing pills here. Take them before you go to bed tonight." The two of them reached out to take the pills. Duan Yi put the pills away. Ning Lang held the pills in his hand and asked, "Can't we take them now? Won't it be faster if we take them now? You just took the antidote this morning. You can't take this with them in case the medicinal effects repel each other. Take them before you go to bed at night." As she spoke, she looked at the sky outside and smiled. "Let's go. It should be about time to go there now." Thus, the 3 people and 1 beast followed him to the Song mansion. At the same time, in the west courtyard of the Song mansion, Patriarch Song, who had just woken up in the morning, instinctively touched the person in his arms. With a warm and fragrant jade in his arms, it should have been very comfortable. However, when he touched it, it felt a little dry and rough. He was startled and opened his eyes with some doubts. He slightly lowered his head to look at the person in his arms. "Ah!" As he screamed, he instinctively jumped up from the bed. With a piece of cloth wrapped around his waist, he jumped off the bed. His face was filled with fear and shock. His usually dignified face was now filled with shame and anger. "Who are you? Get out!" The woman on the bed woke up from her daze and looked at the person standing in front of the bed glaring at her in confusion. Her voice was filled with confusion and doubt. "Master, what's wrong?" However, the moment she spoke, even she was stunned. She opened her mouth in a daze and instinctively lowered her head. When she saw the wrinkled skin on her hand, she immediately screamed. "Ah!" Her sharp voice was filled with panic and fear, as well as disbelief. Her eyes were wide open and her body couldn't stop trembling. She looked at her hands and then stretched out her trembling hands to touch her face, as well as the strand of white hair that fell on her cheek. Chapter 997. When the naked figure in the mirror was reflected in her eyes, she stepped back in disbelief. Her legs went soft and she fell to the ground. The person in the mirror was like an old woman. Her sexy and plump body had become old and shriveled at this time. Her face was skinny and she was no longer as beautiful as before. Her white hair made her look like an old woman who was nearly 100 years old. There was nothing familiar about her. How could this be? How could this be? How could I become like this? How could this be? Her hands tightly wrapped around her ugly naked body as she muttered uncontrollably. Her expression carried a trace of absent-mindedness, unable to believe that when she woke up, she had become neither a human nor a ghost. In a trance, she seemed to have thought of something. Helplessly and in a panic, she looked at the Song family head who was standing at the side and glaring at her angrily. She cried, "Master, Master, how could this be? How could I become like this?" Song family head was still furious a moment ago, but when he woke up, the enchanting beauty in his arms had turned into an old woman who was over 100 years old. Just as he was about to put on his clothes and order people to drag her out, he heard a hoarse and unpleasant sobbing voice. She even called him master, which made him furious. He was angry and embarrassed. He stepped forward and kicked the naked old woman who was sitting on the ground. "Bastard! Who the hell are you?" Second Madam, who was in a state of panic and helplessness, was kicked in the chest by him. Her whole body fell backward, rolled twice, and hit a cabinet in the corner. Her head hit the ground, and the skin on it was broken. Blood seeped out, and she cried out in pain because of the internal force contained in that kick. "Ah!" She screamed and struggled to get up. With tears streaming down her face, she looked at Song family head who was already putting on his clothes and cried, "Master, it's me, I'm Lien, I'm Lien, Song family head, who was putting on his clothes, was shocked when he heard this. He stopped putting on his clothes and looked like he had seen a ghost. You're Lien, He took a breath of cold air. How could it be? Obviously, he didn't believe that a delicate and beautiful beauty had become an old woman when she woke up. No one could bear this psychological change and visual impact. "Patriarch? What's the matter with the patriarch? Do you need us to go in?" Because of the screams and cries in the room, the guards outside were alerted. At this moment, a few guards were shouting outside and asking questions. As soon as they heard the order to come in, they would rush in. Upon hearing the conversation outside, Second Madam, who was lying on the ground, endured the pain of being kicked and struggled to get up. She hurriedly put on her clothes, but at the thought of her inhuman appearance, she couldn't help but burst into tears. However, when she cried when she was young and beautiful, it was like a pear blossom with tears. She was so delicate and beautiful that it made people feel pity for her. At this moment, she had turned into an old woman. Her body and appearance had changed. Her hair was white and her face was wrinkled. When she cried again, it would only make people feel disgusted. They wouldn't even want to take a second look at her. "You are Lien, Song family head calmed down. He also felt that it was impossible for an outsider to sleep in his arms after he fell asleep. Then, was this old woman really Lien, However, if it really was her, how did she suddenly become like this overnight? Chapter 998. Song family head frowned and looked at her. He paused for a moment and then said, "I'll ask the doctor to come and take a look at you." While speaking, he walked out of the outer room and ordered someone to quickly ask the doctor in the mansion to come over. The second madam was crying in a low voice in the inner room. Master Song frowned and looked inside from time to time, but he did not go in again. Perhaps he did not want to face the old woman. Not long after, the doctor hurried in under the lead of the guards and entered. Under the master's instructions, he came to the inner room to diagnose the second madam. However, after seeing the second madam's condition, the doctor was surprised and shocked. "How is it?" Master Song asked in a deep voice and looked at the doctor in the mansion. "Master, I've never seen or heard of the second madam's situation." The old man's face was full of surprise. He sighed and said, "I've only heard of people whose hair turned white overnight, but I've never heard of people who aged overnight. I've checked madam's pulse and checked her body, but I couldn't find anything wrong. This old man is really helpless in this case of aging overnight. I don't know how to treat it." Hearing this, the crying sound came out again. However, this time, Song family had only felt irritated when he heard it. "Mother? Mother?" Outside, a worried voice came. It was the third young master of the Song family, the youngest son of the second madam. Because the guard went to find the doctor in the mansion, and he was also in the western courtyard, he heard that there seemed to be something wrong here. The crying came out early in the morning, so he hurried over. He ran in quickly. As soon as he entered, he saw his father was also there. He could not help but slow down and salute in a regular way. "Father. Why are you here?" Master Song looked at his youngest son and calmed down. "I heard from the servant that there was crying early in the morning, so I came to have a look." He looked at his father, who was sitting steadily, and asked carefully, "Father, what's wrong with my mother?" Hearing this, Song family head frowned, sighed, stood up, and said to him, "You go and have a look." As soon as his voice fell, he didn't comfort the people inside, but strode out. Seeing this, the crying sound came again. When third young master saw this, he couldn't help but be startled. He stopped the doctor who was about to leave and asked, "What happened to my mother?" The doctor stopped in his tracks and glanced at him before saying, "Third young master, second madam has contracted the disease of aging and turned into an old woman overnight. You should go in and take a look." As he spoke, he shook his head and walked out. The third young master's eyes widened in astonishment when he heard his words. Aging disease? What was that? He strode inside and saw his mother curled up in bed with the quilt. He couldn't help but go forward. "Mother. What's wrong with you? What's going on? Let me have a look." As he spoke, he pulled down her blanket with one hand, but when the person under the blanket was revealed, it gave him a fright. "Ah!" he exclaimed and instinctively took a few steps back. His heart was thumping wildly and he looked at the person on the bed in disbelief with a frightened expression. That was his mother. How could this be? Chapter 999. Seeing this scene and hearing her words, third young master was also at a loss. I had someone send a message to second brother yesterday. He should be home today. Second brother has always had a lot of ideas. He must have a way. Here, he was comforting his mother in the room. Seeing this sudden change, he didn't know how to deal with it. Originally, he had asked someone to bring his brother back because he had suffered outside. He hoped that his brother could help him think of a way to vent his anger. He didn't expect that he would be beaten up yesterday, and today, something like this would happen to his mother. The sound of crying continued in the west courtyard, and the atmosphere was gloomy. In another place, in another family in the same city, Song Ming's mother's family, his grandfather, and the others received the information from the black market. When they saw the information, they were all furious and called people to go to the Song family. Song Ming's mother's family was also a big family in the city. Although their foundation couldn't compare to the Song family, who had the support of other families in the 8 great empires, their power and status in the city weren't low. Otherwise, the second madam wouldn't have been unable to become the official wife for more than 10 years, and her son could only be born of a concubine. Now that they knew the inside story of that year, they were extremely furious. Full of anger, they brought people to the Song family's mansion. Because they were from the eldest young master Song Ming's mother's family and were relatives of the Song family, even if they brought people with them in anger, the gatekeepers couldn't stop them. "Where's that woman? Drag her out." The old man in the lead was Song Ming's mother's father, who was also his grandfather, the Lu family's great master. Ever since he abdicated, it had been a long time since he was this angry. Almost as soon as they entered the Song family's mansion, Song Ming's servant quickly ran to the south courtyard to tell the eldest young master, who was grounded. At the same time, the Song family's housekeeper and some other people saw that the situation wasn't good and quickly went to inform the master, great master, and the elders. After all, even the great master of the Lu family had come out. It was obvious that the situation wasn't good. However, in the end, the eldest young master didn't cause any trouble that was too excessive. Why did they come in anger? They even looked like they wanted to kill someone. What was the reason? Go to the west courtyard and bring that woman here. The Lu family patriarch sat in the front hall, giving orders to his son, the Lu family patriarch, 2 nascent soul cultivators, and 4 family elders. After hearing the news, Song family head hurried over and saw his father-in-law and brother-in-law sitting in the hall angrily. Even the elders of the Lu family had come. Song family head couldn't help but be a little surprised. He hurried over and bowed to the Lu family's old man, his father-in-law. "Father-in-law, what's going on?" he asked, his face full of confusion. Bang! Elder Lu's face was gloomy. He slammed his hand on the table and stared at him with sharp eyes and anger. "You raised a good woman." Song family head was startled by the heavy slap on the table. Before he could recover, he heard his father's words. He felt even more strange and asked, "What does father-in-law mean by this? Did something happen? What is it? Don't you know what's happened?" "That's right, if it wasn't for someone sending the information to us, I wouldn't know what happened more than 10 years ago." Chapter 1000. Grandpa, Uncle, why are you here? At this moment, Song Ming's surprised voice came from outside. He ignored the anger of the people in the hall and walked forward. He just happened to see his grandfather throw something at his father, so he went forward and took out a piece of paper to have a look. With this look, his originally somewhat lazy expression suddenly sank, and his usual ruffian look also disappeared from his face. He picked up the other papers and looked at them, one by one. The more he looked, the darker his face became, and the more murderous his body became. In the end, he even took a piece of information that his father picked up from the ground and looked at it. After reading the information, he threw it on the table, turned around, and strode out without saying a word. Seeing that, Patriarch Song was stunned and couldn't help but call out, "Ming, where are you going?" However, Song Ming didn't answer him. Instead, he disappeared in front of him in a few moments. Seeing this, Patriarch Song lowered his head and looked at the information. At first, he didn't think much of it, but who knew that the things recorded on it made his heart tremble and he was in disbelief. How is this possible? This is impossible. Impossible? It's so accurate that the time and date are recorded. How is it impossible? How many people's handprints are in here? You say it's impossible. Do you think this thing can be forged? Do you think that today, who would still make things difficult for that delicate woman of yours? Patriarch Song opened his mouth and looked at the information in his hand. He only felt a little confused and couldn't believe the things recorded on the information in front of him. Could those things be true? How could it be? What happened? Why did I hear that old man Lu is here? Patriarch Song and a few elders also came to the hall. Because Patriarch Song and Patriarch Lu had been friends for many years, their relationship was very good. After becoming in-laws, their relationship was even better. Therefore, when he heard that the people of Lu family came in anger, he was really a little surprised. The old ancestor of the Song clan walked in with a few elders. Not long after he sat down, he ordered people to pick up the scattered documents and handed them to the old ancestor. Looking at the records, the old ancestor of the Song clan released his aura, which was filled with terrifying killing intent and anger. He took a breath and looked at Patriarch Lu, saying, "You don't have to worry. If this is true, I will definitely give your Lu family an explanation. As soon as he finished speaking, the panicked voice of the steward came from outside. Not good, not good. First young master went to the west courtyard with a sword to kill second madam. He's fighting with third young master. When everyone in the hall heard this, they rushed out one by one and rushed to the west courtyard. At the same time, Feng Jiu, Duan Yi, and Ning Lang were drinking tea at a tea stall in the alley outside the Song clan as they listened to the commotion within the clan. Even though there was still some distance between them, with their cultivation, they could still vaguely hear it if they listened carefully. Therefore, it could be said that even though they were sitting there, the sounds coming from inside still faintly reached their ears. Didn't you say you were going to go in? Are you going to drink tea here? Duan Yi glanced at Feng Jiu and didn't know what he wanted to do. Chapter 1001. At this time, the west courtyard of the Song mansion was in a mess. Song Ming rushed into the courtyard of the second madam of the west courtyard with a long sword in his hand. However, before he could get close to the inner room, he was stopped by his half-brother. He had never had a good impression of this half-brother of his, because their existence was only telling him, reminding him of how his father had betrayed his mother. Come out. Bai Lian. Come out. Song Ming waved away the people who stopped him and shouted, Third brother, you'd better get out of the way. Otherwise, don't blame my sword for being blind. Big brother, what are you doing? He was no match for Song Ming. With a wave of his hand, he was sent flying. However, he felt that even if Song Ming did not like him, he would not kill him because there was no brotherhood between them, because the blood of the same father flowed in their veins. However, he underestimated Song Ming's fierceness in his rage. When Song Ming strode forward and stepped through the door, he saw Bai Lian pouncing to block him again. Enraged, Bai Lian stabbed the sharp sword in his hand towards Bai Lian. If you don't come out, I'll kill your son. Hiss. Big brother. The sharp blade cut his arm and blood oozed out. He gasped and cried out in pain. He couldn't believe it. A faint smell of blood filled the air. Not only was the third young master shocked, but even the guards who didn't know how to stop him were shocked. They thought that the eldest young master wouldn't attack the third young master. Who knew that the eldest young master's sword really stabbed the third young master? Perhaps it was because of Song Ming's threatening words outside, or perhaps it was because she heard her son's cry of pain, but the second madam ran out from inside. However, when she appeared, everyone outside couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. Hiss. This is the second madam. That's right, that's right. When Master woke up this morning, he was shocked. He even asked someone to call a doctor over. The doctor in the manor said that second madam had an aging disease and became like this overnight. Hiss. It's unbelievable. The second madam is such a beautiful person, but she became an old woman overnight? Is this an illness? Or is she poisoned? Can it be cured? I heard that it's probably an illness. The doctors didn't find any poison in second madam's body. It's hard to say if she'll be cured. Song Ming was also shocked by the old woman who ran out. He glared angrily at the person in front of him. She was dressed in a simple and elegant dress, but her hair was white and her face was full of wrinkles. She was so old that she looked like she was over 100 years old. If he hadn't heard the whispers and discussions of the guards behind him, he wouldn't have believed that the person in front of him was actually that woman, Bai Lian. Bai Lian. You have viciously poisoned my mother, this is what the heavens can't stand and want to punish you. Ha 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 ha. In just one night, you've turned into something that doesn't look like a human or a ghost. Bai Lian, do you think the old man still wants you? Ha 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 ha. Song Ming raised his head and laughed loudly. His voice was filled with ruthlessness and schadenfreude. He pointed the sword in his hand at her. From the moment you entered the door, I've already found you an eyesore. A vixen who only knows how to seduce people still wants to be the mistress of our Song family. Humph. With me, Song Ming, around, you'll never have this chance. Hearing those words, the third young master was stunned. He didn't care about his injured hand and looked at Song Ming in shock. Big brother, what are you talking about? What do you mean my mother harmed your mother? How is this possible? Chapter 1002. How could this be? How could this be? That incident happened more than 10 years ago. How could it suddenly be dug up? How could Song Ming suddenly know? What was going on? First, she became an old woman overnight. Even the old master did not dare to look at her and left. Now, Song Ming came to say these words and dug up this incident. She vaguely felt that something was not right. She suddenly felt that these two incidents should be related. If Song Ming and the others had the information and knew about that incident, they would not have waited until now. However, it just had to be dug up today. Did that mean that he only knew about it today? Who told him about it? A series of questions floated in her heart. Her mind spun rapidly as she thought about how to deal with it next. However, before she could think of a way, she saw a group of people striding in from outside. Seeing those people, she only felt her vision go black and she felt like fainting. At that moment, it was as if the sky had collapsed. In addition to the patriarch, there was also the Song clan's patriarch, as well as several clan elders. These people had never had a good impression of her. Even though she had done many things to please them, they still did not take her seriously. They had never stood on her side and spoke a word for her. They were even more unwilling to let her two sons become legitimate sons and could only be listed as illegitimate sons. Usually, even if there were no major events, they would not appear. Now, one by one, they were here. Moreover, even the people of the Lu family were here. When she saw the Lu family's eyes that wanted to eat her alive, she could not help but step back. What did these people want to do? On the way here, they had heard the master of the Song family mention that the second madam had aged overnight. Even if they were mentally prepared, they were still slightly shocked when they saw it now. Why would a person suddenly age out of nowhere? However, at this time, they did not want to care about how she became like this. They only wanted to confirm that this old woman was the second madam. Today, they came to settle the debt with her for his daughter, not to care about how she became like this. Song Hong. The Lu family's ancestor called out in a deep voice. His eyes were filled with killing intent as he glanced at the second madam. He then looked at the Song family's head and called out his name. He asked, "What kind of explanation do you plan to give us for this woman?" Song clan leader hesitated and said, "Father-in-law, please give me some time. I will definitely give the Lu clan a satisfactory explanation. After all, she was the mother of his other two sons. Could he really kill her just like that? We'll wait here and watch. If you want to stall for time, we don't mind taking her life ourselves," the Lu family's patriarch said in a gloomy voice. In an instant, he attacked. A gust of wind surged from his palm. In the next moment, as he raised his hand, the second madam, who was hiding behind him, was ruthlessly thrown out without being able to resist. "Ah! Mother!" A blood-curdling scream rang out, along with the third young master's worried and alarmed cries. He quickly went forward to help her up. He was very angry in his heart. "Why did you treat my mother like this? You want to kill my mother without any evidence? I won't allow it." He stood protectively by her side and glared at the Lu family. Chapter 1003. The evidence is here. How do you want to interrogate her? The Lu family's patriarch snorted. "Don't even think about protecting this woman. We can let her two sons go because they have the blood of your Song family. But if this woman doesn't die today, my Lu family will not let this go." "No, where did this evidence come from? Is it reliable? How did this evidence appear now? Didn't we investigate it before?" Song family head asked, his heart full of doubts. If Bai Lian was still that delicate and soft beauty, he would not leave her alone and watch her suffer there, helplessly hiding in a corner. Song family head's heart was full of pity for her, as well as his many years of affection for her. But the current her had white hair and a face full of wrinkles. She was like an old woman without the slightest bit of beauty. Even if there was some reluctance in his heart, at this moment, he couldn't feel any pity for such an old woman. However, he was puzzled. Where did the evidence in the Lu family's hands come from? The evidence was so detailed that it shocked them. Everything she had done was not left out. Among them, there were some that he knew, and some that he did not know. But where did this evidence come from? Who would send this evidence to the Lu family at this time? Where could it come from? Woman, you must have offended some big shot. Otherwise, how could they have so easily produced the evidence that even our two families couldn't find? As the Lu family patriarch spoke, he stared at the bewildered woman. The more he thought about it, the more likely it was that it was true. Almost at the same time that the Lu family's patriarch said this, everyone in the Song family also thought of this. They could tell at a glance whether the evidence was fake or not. And those things, even their Song family and Lu family could not find out. How could someone else have it so easily? This Bai Lian must have offended some big shot. Otherwise, the other party would not have pushed all the things about her to the stage. Moreover, this evidence was not sent to the Song family, but to the Lu family. Only the Lu family would mercilessly kill Bai Lian after knowing these things. None of the people present were fools. In an instant, everyone thought of this point. While they were shocked, they were even more horrified. Who was that person? How could he have such great magical power? If they became enemies with such a person, the consequences would be too terrible. No, I didn't. Bai Lian shook her head and cried. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something. She was so shocked that she couldn't say anything else. Her body was trembling and her eyes were wide open in disbelief. Was it those three people? Those three youths? Over the years, even if she had some small tricks, they were only internal and not external. She rarely made enemies with people outside. Only after hearing her sons crying yesterday did she send people to deal with the three people. She poisoned them and let them die silently. Today, due to the sudden change in her appearance when she woke up early in the morning, her mind was in a mess and she was unable to calm down. Now, the people of the Lu clan came to her door with evidence to kill her. After their reminder, she remembered that the two Jindan cultivators she sent out last night had yet to return. Chapter 1004. She muttered in disbelief. Her expression showed a trace of absent-mindedness and fear. Seeing this scene, how could the crowd not know that she had really offended some big shot outside? Therefore, Song family had asked, "Did you really offend someone outside? When was it? Who did you offend?" Now is not the time to talk about who she offended, but about how she poisoned my daughter, your wife. You don't ask about it, and you don't deal with it. Instead, you care about something unrelated. Lu family head's face was gloomy as he shouted, "Since your Song family won't deal with it, then our Lu family will make her pay with her life. Bring her back," he shouted. The two people behind him were about to step forward, but at this moment, a figure rushed in. Grandfather Lu. A young man suddenly appeared in front of everyone. The young man's aura was steady, and his face was 60% similar to Song family heads. This person was Bai Lian's eldest son, and also the second son of the Song family. He rushed back because he heard that his brother sent someone to deliver a message, but he didn't expect to hear that something had happened to his mother. He rushed all the way here and heard about it from the guards of the Song family. This matter shocked him, and at the same time, he quickly thought of a solution. Even if it was true that Bai Lian poisoned the first madam, at this time, he could only deny it. Otherwise, he would only end up dead. While he was thinking of a solution, he was also thinking about who wanted to deal with his mother. Was the evidence in the Lu family's hands true? Why couldn't the Song family and the Lu family find it, but others could? It's you, kid. Get out of the way. Lu family head's eyes were cold. He waved his sleeve and ordered people to take Bai Lian away. Seeing that he couldn't stop the Lu family, he quickly turned to his grandfather. Grandfather, this matter hasn't been investigated clearly. How can you let them treat my mother like this? The Lu family came to take people away like this, completely disregarding our Song family's face. This is slapping our Song family's face. Grandfather. Shut up. Lu family head coldly shouted. His sharp eyes contained pressure as he stared at him. You're so young, yet you're so scheming. The moment you open your mouth, you want to sow discord between our Lu and Song family. What a vicious mind. Humph. A son of a concubine is a son of a concubine. That woman's son is not presentable. Being reprimanded in public, the second young master's face turned red, and his fists were tightly clenched under his sleeves. A sinister light flashed through his slightly lowered eyes, but he did not speak again. The Song clan ancestor, who had been silent all this while, frowned and ordered, "Lock Bai Lian up first." He then looked at the Lu clan ancestor and said, "Let's go to the front and talk." After that, he added, "Don't worry, I'll definitely get justice for my dead daughter-in-law." However, as soon as he finished speaking, a shrill scream suddenly sounded in the courtyard. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly turned their heads to look. They saw Song Ming, who had been ignored by everyone earlier, standing in an inconspicuous corner with a long sword in his hand. At this moment, the long sword in his hand was dripping with blood. His cold and sinister gaze was fixed on Bai Lian, who was twitching and screaming on the ground. The tendons in Bai Lian's hands and feet were all broken, and blood seeped out from his hands and feet as he fell to the ground. Song Ming's sudden attack caught everyone off guard, but it wasn't unexpected. Facing the enemy who killed his mother, how could he remain calm? However, when the other two brothers saw this scene, they were stunned and involuntarily cried out. Chapter 1005. Supporting their mother, whose hands and feet had been cut off, the two brothers glared at Song Ming with hatred. Anger grew in their hearts and surged in their hearts. The third brother couldn't help but rush forward and slash at Song Ming with his sword. "You dare to hurt my mother, I'll kill you." However, before he could get close to Song Ming, he was pushed away by the Lu family's ancestor. The Lu family's ancestor protected his grandson and stared at them coldly. "You're really out of control. Since when did a bastard dare to brandish a sword at a son of the first wife?" "Enough!" Song ancestor shouted in a deep voice. "Take him away. Everyone else, go to the front hall." As he spoke, he turned and walked forward. Seeing this, two guards came forward and took away Bai Lian, who was twitching on the ground, and locked her up in the dungeon to await punishment. The others went to the front hall. After everyone left, only the two brothers were left in the courtyard. The second brother asked, "How did this happen? Did mother offend someone recently?" Today's matter was obviously a trick played by someone behind the scenes. They wanted to kill his mother. "Brother, mother usually doesn't go out. How could she make enemies?" "Brother, they said mother killed the first madam." "Is it true?" He was a bit worried. If this was true, could his mother still live? The second brother thought for a while and said, "Someone wants mother dead. And it's not an ordinary person. I'm afraid mother won't be able to escape this calamity." But mother didn't offend anyone. "Yesterday, I was beaten up and came to find mother to help me vent my anger. She also told me not to cause trouble so father wouldn't be unhappy." How could she make enemies? Hearing this, the second brother was stunned. He hurriedly grabbed his shoulder and asked anxiously, "You told me to come back yesterday and said you were bullied. Did you go find mother before that?" "I told father." Father told me not to cause trouble, so I told mother. But she didn't help me. Second brother's thoughts ran deeper than his. When he heard these words and thought of the various unforeseen events today, he had already faintly guessed something. Thinking about it, third brother must have offended someone with an extraordinary status. Otherwise, how could he have gotten into such a disaster for no reason? Let us go into the anteroom, and you will tell me about it as we go. He drew him into the anteroom, and made him explain the events of the day. After listening to his words, second brother faintly guessed that their mother had asked third brother to bear with it, but she must have secretly sent someone to teach those three people a lesson. Otherwise, it was impossible for such a thing to happen today. However, speaking of these three people, he vaguely remembered that when he came back earlier, he saw the three people that old third had described drinking tea at a tea stall not far from home, in the front hall. After a discussion between Song and Lu, the Song family decided to execute Bai Lian, because the evidence was real and could not be refuted. The truth was in front of them, and no one could protect her or save her. All right, as long as she's dead, I'll let this matter go. He patted Song Ming beside him and said, Ming, once that vicious woman dies, I will accompany you to pay respects to your mother. Song Ming nodded. He pursed his lips and did not speak. He only found out that his mother was killed after so many years. If he had known earlier, perhaps his mother would not have been killed when he was 5 years old. Chapter 1006. When the people in the hall heard this, they were slightly surprised and looked at the two people who ran in. In fact, it was not true that Bai Lian was harmed. This was because Bai Lian had indeed done those things. It was just that she had been exposed. To the Lu family and Song Ming, they had to be grateful to the person who exposed her. Otherwise, they might continue to believe that the daughter of the Lu family, Song Ming's mother, had really died of illness back then. Bai Lian had to pay the price for what she did, and this would be her life. No matter who said it, no matter what, the Lu family would not let a person who killed their daughter live to see the sun tomorrow. However, they were really curious. Who could it be that they couldn't find out the information? Was there such a great ability? After receiving his father's signal, Patriarch Song coughed and asked, What are you talking about? What do you mean by knowing who harmed your mother? What's going on? Father, I was beaten yesterday. I told you, but you only cared about Big Brother's matter. You didn't even ask me a word. You just asked me to endure and not cause trouble. The third son looked at his father and said sadly, I went to find mother and told her. She must have sent someone to help me vent my anger. It must be those three people who did something. Otherwise, mother wouldn't have aged overnight, and she wouldn't have been framed for killing the first madam. Hearing this, everyone in the hall had different thoughts. You mean you were beaten outside yesterday? Patriarch Song's eyes moved slightly as he stared at his youngest son and asked. Because they were born of a concubine, their mother had no background. Therefore, he had never cared about his two sons as much as his eldest son, Song Ming. Yes, it must be them. It must be. He emphasized with certainty. After his brother's reminder, he felt that this matter must have something to do with them. Father, when I came back earlier, I saw those three people outside the house. They were at a small tea stall not far from here, the second son said. In his heart, he actually hoped to catch those three people and explain it clearly. In this way, they would know that his mother was actually framed. When everyone present heard their words, their expressions changed slightly. After receiving his father's signal, Patriarch Song said to his eldest son, Ming, go and invite those three young masters in. Hearing this, the two brothers standing in the hall couldn't help but be stunned. Why didn't he ask them to go? Why invite? Instead of catching them? Yes. Song Ming responded. Just as he was about to walk out, he saw the butler hurrying in and standing outside the hall to report. Patriarch, there are three young masters outside who have come to visit. As soon as these words came out, everyone in the hall was stunned. Song family head was also a little stunned. 3 young masters. But one of them is dressed in red, and all 3 of them are outstanding. Yes, one of the 3 young masters is dressed in red, and the other 2 have extraordinary auras. The housekeeper hurriedly said. They still dare to come to our door. Third brother's angry voice rang out. Hatred surged in his heart. It was because of them that his mother became like this. Under such circumstances, they actually dared to come. Everyone in the hall was slightly surprised and felt strange, but they didn't say anything. Song family head said to his eldest son, Ming, go invite the 3 young masters in. Chapter 1007. After Song Ming heard those words, he strode out. No matter who these 3 people were, since they helped him find his mother's murderer, they were Song Ming's benefactors. As for the other 2 brothers, after hearing their father's words, they could only grit their teeth and retreat to the side, not daring to say anything more. Many times, the children of concubines did not have the right to speak and were not valued. This was something they had known for a long time. When Song Ming came outside and saw the 3 people, he could not help but be startled. He looked at them with a strange expression. It's you guys? That day, when he was gambling in the alley, he saw the 3 of them standing in the crowd. He did not expect to see them again, and it was them who came to visit. Of course it's us. Ning Lang grinned and strode inside. Song Ming, is your house lively? Hearing this, Song Ming's expression changed slightly and he asked, did you guys give the information in my grandfather's hands? Ah. What information? Ning Lang was slightly startled and turned to look at Fengjiu. What information did you give them? What's the use of it? At the side, Duan Yi also looked at Fengjiu. Fengjiu only told them that they did not need to interfere and that he would take care of it himself. Hence, when they came out early this morning and drank a few cups of tea at a tea stall outside, he said that he wanted to see Song Ming. As for what he did, they had no idea. Aren't you going to invite us in for a cup of tea? Or do you plan to just stand here and chat? Fengjiu glanced at Song Ming and said. Hearing this, Song Ming turned slightly. Please, my grandfather and the others are waiting for you inside. Fengjiu strode in with Duan Yi and Ning Lang by his side. The group walked in. The people who were waiting in the hall saw Song Ming come in with 3 youths. The youth in the lead was dressed in red. His face was handsome and unrestrained, and his aura was incomparably noble. When their gazes fell on the youth in red, they almost did not look away. The heads of the Lu family and the Song family, as well as the 4 elders, looked at the handsome face of the youth in red with astonishment in their eyes. They, who were originally sitting, could not help but stand up and personally went forward to welcome him. You are young Master Feng. The Song family patriarch looked at the red-clothed youth in shock and surprise. It could be said that the ghost doctor's portrait was in the hands of almost every family. They had originally thought that they would not see the ghost doctor here, but the youth in front of them looked exactly the same as the portrait, and was dressed in red. Who else could it be but the ghost doctor? Seeing their patriarchs and patriarchs lose their composure like this, the patriarchs of the 2 clans couldn't help but be surprised. Their gazes fell on the red-clothed youth as they sized him up. They saw that besides his noble bearing and handsome appearance, there wasn't anything else about him that could make them so shocked and pleasantly surprised. However, young Master Feng? What young Master Feng? Could it be that the patriarch and the others knew this young man? Duan Yi and Ning Lang were already aware of Fengjiu's identity as the ghost doctor. They had seen many similar things along the way, so they were calm. The 2 of them stood quietly beside Fengjiu. Even the neglected pet, Tun Yun, was squatting beside Fengjiu, looking at everyone in the hall with narrowed eyes. I hope that Patriarch Song will forgive me for taking the liberty to come and disturb you. Chapter 1008. No matter how much dignity he had, after seeing such a scene, it was all gone. Fortunately, he didn't know that she had seen his debauchery last night. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't be able to maintain his dignity as the head of the family in front of her. No, no, it is our Song clan's honor to welcome such a distinguished guest like young Master Feng. Song clan head said with a smile, looking at the two people standing beside Fengjiu. He asked, I wonder who these two are. My father is the richest man in the Tsang Empire, Ning City's Lord Ning Yuan. I am his son, Ning Lang. Ning Lang slightly raised his chin and introduced himself with a proud face. When everyone in the hall heard this, they were stunned for a moment. This was the first time they had seen someone introduce his father first. I am Duan Yi. Compared to Ning Lang, Duan Yi simply reported his name and did not continue. So it is young Master Ning and young Master Duan. Song clan head smiled and said to the three people, please sit down. After the two people reported their names, a strange look appeared on Song Ming's face. Ning Lang and Duan Yi. Weren't they the other two troublemakers of the Two-Star Academy? It was said that these two people were the same as him. They did not like to go to the academy to cultivate. The former liked to make money and was a complete money grubber, while the latter was arrogant and often acted recklessly. After sitting down, Fengjiu looked around at the people in the hall and showed an apologetic smile. It is really abrupt, I came uninvited, it seems that I have disturbed everyone. How about we come again another day? Hearing this, Duan Yi, who was sitting below Fengjiu, slightly twitched the corner of his mouth. He took a sip of the tea served by the servant to hide the expression on his face. Ning Lang was drinking tea. When he heard this, he could not help but choke and cough twice. Cough cough. He glanced at Fengjiu and saw that his expression was indifferent, his manners natural and unrestrained, carrying the appearance of a gentleman. He could not help but secretly mutter in his heart, pretending, really pretending. Ha ha ha, no, no, it is just some trivial matters in the house that have been dealt with. Song family head glanced at the people in the hall, and then his eyes fell on Fengjiu. He asked, I wonder what brings young Master Feng here today. Oh, I'm here to take Song Ming away. Her gaze fell on Song Ming. At the same time, she moved her hand and took out a token, asking someone to pass it to Patriarch Song. Today, I came here as an instructor of the Two-Star Academy, and Song Ming is the same as the two people beside me. For the next year, he will be under my care. Hearing this, Song Ming stared at him in shock. Even the other people in the hall were astonished. The Lu clan's patriarch and the Lu clan's old ancestor, as well as the two people from the Song clan, all knew about Fengjiu's identity as the ghost doctor, but they did not think that today he would come here as a mentor. When did the Two-Star Academy become so capable? Even the ghost doctor could be invited as a teacher. After looking at the identity jade token, Patriarch Song looked at his father and the two people from the Lu clan and nodded. This is indeed the identity jade token of a Two-Star Academy's instructor. His voice paused for a moment, as he looked at Fengjiu and smiled. Ming, can be taught by young Master Feng, this is exactly what we want. How about this, young Master Feng can stay in the house and rest for a day or two, so that we can properly take care of him. Chapter 1009. Seeing this, the Song family head didn't force him. He smiled and said, all right, I'll have him come as soon as possible. I won't let young Master Feng wait too long. At the same time, he returned the jade token to Fengjiu. At this moment, the Song family's ancestor stood up and cupped his hands. Young Master Feng, I'll have to trouble you to teach my naughty grandson. You're too kind. She stood up and looked at the third brother. Her lips curled up as she said to everyone, we won't stay for long. Please. At this moment, the Lu family's ancestor pulled his son forward and smiled at the dazzling red-clothed youth. He bowed and said gratefully, this old man represents the Lu family in thanking young Master Feng. He didn't say it clearly, but everyone in the hall understood what he meant. He wasn't thanking him for teaching Song Ming, but for sending Bai Lian's information and evidence to the Lu family. He wanted them to know that their daughter's death wasn't simple. When Fengjiu saw this, his eyes flashed. He didn't avoid the bow and said, I didn't do anything. There's no need to be like this. With that, he looked at Duan Yi and the others. The two of them also stood up and said their goodbyes. We'll send young Master Feng off. As they spoke, they personally escorted them out. After watching them leave through the main gate of the Song mansion, the four of them looked at each other, then walked back into the mansion and returned to the main hall. Ancestor, who is this young Master Feng? One of the elders asked in confusion. Seeing the four of them treat him like this, that youth's status wasn't ordinary. We'll talk about this later. First, have someone bring Miss Bai here. The Song family's ancestor said in a deep voice and ordered two people to bring her to the dungeon. Everyone in the hall looked at each other. After a while, Bai Lian, whose hands and feet were covered in blood, was brought in by two cultivators. After the cultivators left, aside from the Song family's ancestor, the family head, the elders, and Bai Lian's two sons, there was only Song Ming. On the Lu family's side were the Lu family's ancestor, patriarch, and a few elders. At this moment, all of their gazes landed on Bai Lian. When they looked at his old face, their hearts were filled with shock and they felt even more solemn. Madam Bai, what evil things have you done these past few days? Hurry up and tell the truth. The Song clan's patriarch bellowed, his sharp gaze fixed on Bai Lian below. It was almost certain that this Bai Lian had offended the ghost doctor. However, what had she done? That was why the ghost doctor was so angry. She had to vent her anger. I did not. That her voice was weak as she lay on the ground, unable to even get up. Seeing the ruthless eyes of the Song family head, her heart became even colder. She had long known that men were unreliable. She had long known that men were all like this. However, it was only when she personally experienced it that her heart ached. Only then did she know what kind of despair was like. Bang! Still not going to say it? Do you think you can hide what you did? If you hadn't offended someone you shouldn't have, would you have aged overnight? The ancestor angrily slammed the table, making a loud sound. His angry voice was filled with thunder and fire. He wanted to kill her with one palm so that she would not be disgraced. Chapter 10:10. However, as soon as she spoke, she was slapped. Still not going to speak? Or do you want to drag your two sons down with you? Let them lose their footing in the Song family? The ancestor's face darkened as he shouted sternly. He stared at the crying Bai Lian and said, if you don't tell us the whole story, even your two sons will be implicated by you. Hearing this, Bai Lian's crying stopped. She looked up at the ancestor in horror and said, this has nothing to do with them, nothing to do with them. Then tell us in detail. The ancestor snorted and stared at her sharply. I'll speak. She cried and shouted, her heart filled with regret. She told him about how her youngest son was bullied and no one stood up for him. In the end, she cried and said, I had people poison them. It's just a latent poison that won't take effect for a while. I thought that after they left here, even if they died somewhere else, they wouldn't suspect us. But I didn't expect that the people I sent out still haven't returned. Hearing this, everyone in the hall was speechless. Just because of a fight between a few youths, she wanted to take their lives. How vicious was her heart. You brought this upon yourself. The Lu family's old man stared at her and said, do you know who that person is? You poisoned him. You're courting death. But if you didn't court death, how would we know the truth of that year? Speaking of which, you brought this upon yourself. As soon as he finished speaking, he looked at the ancestor of the Song family and said, now that we know the truth, how should we deal with this woman? Tell us. The ancestor of the Song family looked at his son and said, she's your woman. You deal with her yourself. Hearing this, the Song family's head pondered. He looked at the old woman below. On that wrinkled face, he couldn't find the slightest bit of familiarity from the past. He sighed and said, Madame Bai's heart is vicious. She even poisoned the madam. Her crime is unforgivable. Since she gave birth to 2 sons for the Song family, let's leave her corpse intact and give her a cup of poisoned wine. Don't, father, don't kill my mother, don't. The 3rd son begged in horror. He kowtowed to the ground one by one, and the sound of the kowtowing echoed clearly in the hall. When she killed my mother, I was only 5 years old. She made my mother suffer so much pain and suffering before she died. A cup of poisoned wine is too easy for her. Song Ming said in a gloomy voice, not feeling pity for them at all. Who caused him to lose his mother when he was young? Who wanted to occupy his mother's position? Who was it that had enjoyed the glory and wealth of the Song family for so many years? The word, death, was too light. It was not enough to vent the hatred in his heart. Bai Lian was startled by Song family head's words and looked at him absent-mindedly. Under her gaze, Song family head thought of the sweet words between the two of them. His eyes flashed and he looked away. Seeing this, Bai Lian smiled in despair. If a man abandons you, then he really abandons you. All these years, even though she had raised some people by her side, at a time like this, they were still unable to save her. She knew that she was going to die without a doubt. However, in her despair, she felt even more unwillingness. She stopped crying and asked in a hoarse voice, "Who are those people? Even if you want me to die, you should at least let me know the reason behind my death. Let me know who I was defeated by." Chapter 10-11. Hearing this, the eyes of the other people in the hall also fell on the Lu clan ancestor and the Song clan ancestor. It seems that only the 4 of them knew the identity of the red-robed youth. Seeing their eyes looking at them, waiting for their answer, the Lu clan ancestor did not speak, but picked up his tea and drank it. "Who is this person? Let the Song clan people tell them. You have heard of his reputation, he is the famous ghost Dr. Fengjiu." Song clan head said, looking at Bai Lian on the ground, "You were destroyed in his hands, you are not wronged." "Ghost doctor, he is actually a ghost doctor." She muttered in disbelief. The ghost doctor was good at treating poisons, for her to end up like this, who can she blame? She can only blame herself. After hearing the clan head's words, the other people in the hall were also shocked. That red-robed youth was actually a ghost doctor. They had heard of the ghost doctor's name, and also knew that in the clans of the major forces, the people in charge had a portrait of the ghost doctor. It was no wonder that their clan head and the Lu clan ancestor recognized the ghost doctor. However, if he was a ghost doctor, he was also an instructor of the 2-Star Academy. Did he come here because of Song Ming? For a time, everyone's heart was different. They were shocked and surprised, especially the Song clan people. They felt that this was a good opportunity to build a friendship with the ghost doctor. Song clan head called out, and 2 shadow guards flashed out from the dark. He took out a bottle of medicine and handed it over. His voice was cold and ruthless. "Give this to the 2nd madam." "Yes." The 2 shadow guards replied, and after receiving the medicine, they saw the 2nd and 3rd madam rushing over and hugging the Song clan head's thigh. "Father, father, don't kill mother, don't kill my mother, father, don't." The 2 of them cried and begged, but Patriarch Song remained indifferent. He put his hands behind his back and looked outside. He shouted, "Men! Take the 2nd young master and the 3rd young master back to the west courtyard. Without my order, they are not allowed to leave the west courtyard even half a step." "Yes." Several guards outside answered, and came in to take the 2 away, and brought them to the west courtyard. "No, father, don't." The cries of the 2 gradually faded away until they could no longer be heard. At this time, the 2 shadow guards in the hall had already poured the poison into Bai Lian's mouth. In front of the people of the Lu clan and the Song clan, they poured the poison down her throat. Song family head looked at him, his eyes were dark, and no one could see his emotions. There was no need to mention the others. All of them had indifferent expressions and didn't care about this life at all. Bai Lian was just a woman. In a large family, there were many ways to make a person disappear. Every method could shut the mouths of the people outside. Song Ming watched as Bai Lian was forced to drink the poison. He watched as she convulsed on the ground in pain. He watched as blood seeped out of her 7 orifices. He watched as she wailed and breathed her last. Poison. It was a highly toxic poison. The poison took effect very quickly. It took less than half an incense stick to burn. Even if the medicine was somewhat torturous, half an incense stick's time passed in the blink of an eye. She could not say that she had suffered much. Take her down and bury her, Song family head said in a deep voice. He waved his hand and motioned for the guards to carry her out. After the guards carried the person on the ground out, everyone in the hall turned their gazes to Song Ming. They looked at him with anticipation, excitement, and agitation. Chapter 10-12. Hearing his father's words, Song Ming only glanced at him, then said to the people beside him, "Grandfather, uncle, I'll go with you to pay respects to mother." All right, let's go." The two nodded in response, revealing joyful expressions. They cupped their hands to the Song family. "We'll take our leave first." As they spoke, they left together with Song Ming. When the Song family saw this, they all looked at each other, but did not stop them, because they knew that Song Ming had never been close to the family head since he was young. Moreover, how did he find out about this matter? The relationship between father and son would become even more strained. Forget it, let him be. With old man Lu and the others watching over him, nothing will happen. When he leaves with the ghost doctor, we'll just have to explain it to them. As the Song family's ancestor spoke, he shook his head and walked out with his hands behind his back. The rest of the matters would be left to them. He had already retired for many years, and no longer wanted to care about the matters of the family. Seeing that everyone had left, the Song family head pursed his lips and stood quietly for a while before walking out. This matter seemed to be over, but it was not yet. If it was not handled properly, the Song family would never have a day of peace. Bai Lian was already dead, and he still had to think about the most appropriate arrangements for his second and third sons. As for his eldest son, Song Ming, he had the Lu family to protect him, his father to protect him, and now there was the ghost doctor. He could not interfere even if he wanted to. However, with the ghost doctor, Duan Yi, and Ning Lang, he did not have to worry. On the other side, after leaving the Song family, Feng Jiu and the other two found a restaurant to sit down and eat a table full of dishes. There was no one else in the private room, so after Duan Yi and Ning Lang looked at each other, they asked, "Feng Jiu, what did you do last night? Tell us about it." They were really curious. Why did he not have to do anything himself to make the Song family fall into chaos? Feng Jiu glanced at the two of them and smiled, then simply told them what he did last night. "Ah. Aging overnight? There's actually such a medicine." Ning Lang looked at him in surprise. "I thought there were only things like the beauty pill. I didn't expect there to be medicine for aging too." Thinking about it, it was really quite scary. If they offended him, who knew when they would be drugged with some strange medicine? Thinking of this, he couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. He was shocked by his previous actions. He actually didn't care about the consequences and sold him out before he even knew what kind of person he was. Thinking about it, he was already being merciful to him. How much longer do we have to wait here? Will Song Ming come? Duan Yi asked. He didn't have any confidence in Song Ming. Would that person go to the Hell Mountain range with them? Yes. Feng Jiu took a sip of wine and slowly lowered his gaze. Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other and didn't say anything. However, to their surprise, in the evening, before the sky turned dark, they returned to the inn and sat idly on the first floor when they saw Song Ming slowly walk in. Other than Feng Jiu, Duan Yi and Ning Lang were surprised to see him again. They didn't expect to see him again so soon. I'm here. Song Ming walked up to Fengjiu and said. Fengjiu looked at the young man in front of him and asked directly, we plan to go to the Hell Mountain Range. Are you interested? Chapter 10:13. Like them, it was one thing to be interested in going with him, but if they weren't, they would still have to go with him. However, he would probably knock them out and carry them away. Hearing that it was the Hell Mountain Range, a hint of surprise flashed across Song Ming's eyes, but he didn't ask any more questions. He just nodded and said, I'll go with you. He didn't want to stay in this family anymore. Since that woman was dead, he should go out and learn more. Have you said goodbye to your family? Fengjiu asked again. I've paid my respects to my mother, and my grandfather and the others know. That's all. Hearing this, she nodded and said, have a seat. We'll leave after eating. Thus, the four of them sat around the table and ate. After the meal, they didn't stay long and directly left the city. Then, they flew on their swords and headed to their next destination. They're gone. In the Song family, when the Song family's patriarch and patriarch heard the news of their departure, it was already a few hours later. Yes, they're gone. Patriarch Song nodded and sighed in his heart. It's good that they're gone. It's good for them to let them experience the outside world. Moreover, with the ghost doctor around, there won't be any major problems that we need to worry about. As the patriarch spoke, he glanced at him and said, you have to pay more attention to your two concubine sons. I want to send them to the academy to cultivate and study, and let them stay in the academy for a few years. Patriarch Song told him his plan. That's good. You can arrange this yourself. With that, the patriarch walked out. A day later, in the evening. Somewhere on the mountain path, Fengjiu and the others were not resting by the mountain path. In front of them, the fire was roasting the game they hunted and the fish they caught in the stream. You guys eat these first. I'll go catch some more. Song Ming said. After finishing a fish, he saw that there was only one left, so he got up and walked towards the stream. Song Ming, a dozen more fish should be enough. Ning Lang shouted and tore off a piece of meat to eat. He stood up again and said, forget it, I'll go help catch some more. You guys eat first, don't burn them. Fengjiu and Duan Yi sat at the side and ate. They also took out wine from the space to drink. Between the grass, the breeze, and the sunset, they were relaxed and at ease. We'll rest here tonight. We'll set up a few tents later, Fengjiu said to Duan Yi as she tore a piece of barbecued meat to eat. Yes. Duan Yi responded. As he roasted the meat, he took the cooked meat and placed it to the side before adding some firewood. As night fell, they set up 4 small tents and sprinkled some medicinal powder on the outside of the tents to prevent snakes and insects from getting close. As the night deepened, the 4 people who had drunk wine fell into a deep sleep. It wasn't until late at night that they were awakened by the faint sound of swords clashing against each other. You're disturbing my sleep in the middle of the night, Ning Lang muttered, then turned around and went back to sleep. Duan Yi and Song Ming, on the other hand, woke up. After exiting the small tent, the two of them looked at each other and went in search of the sound of fighting. As for Fengjiu, although she heard some unpeaceful sounds, she did not pay attention to it. There were many unpeaceful things in this world. She would not care about those irrelevant things. Tun Yun was guarding outside the small tent, so she could rest at ease. Chapter 10:14. It was a few black-clothed men who were chasing after 2 young women. However, the 2 women were protected by a few guards and an old woman by their side. Even so, they had suffered quite a few injuries. Their clothes were torn by tree branches as they ran, revealing their snow-white skin. Seeing the exposed skin of the 2 beautiful women, Song Ming's eyes lit up. However, he said to Duan Yi with a serious expression, seeing injustice on the road, "Don't you think we should draw our swords and help?" Duan Yi glanced at him and said coldly, "I don't know them, so I can't be bothered to save those two women." As he spoke, he turned around and was about to leave, but who knew that he would grab his hand. "Don't go. If they were two weak women, as men, how could we not save them? How could we be men? Go go go." Before Duan Yi could regain his senses, he was pulled forward and heard him shout, "Let go of those two ladies." It turned out that when the few guards saw that they couldn't beat those people and that they were injured, they actually abandoned the two women and the old woman and escaped. Just as the few black-clothed men grabbed the two women, Song Ming pulled Duan Yi and jumped out. Duan Ye's baby face darkened. He, who did not plan to fight, was pulled forward. Seeing the swords in the black-clothed men's hands coming towards him, he could only grit his teeth and glare at Song Ming. Holding his sword, he attacked the black-clothed men. Those black-clothed men were at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. If it was 1 against 1, Duan Yi would not be afraid. However, when they attacked together, he was unable to withstand it. With a slight carelessness, a few small bloody wounds appeared on his body. He dodged in a sorry state and looked for Song Ming. However, when he saw him, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. "Ladies, are you all right? Don't worry, with me here, those people can't hurt you." "Sai, look, my hand is bleeding." Song Ming supported one of the women and talked about her wound, but his eyes were looking at her faintly discernible chest. "Young master, thank you for saving our lives." The woman he was supporting spoke in a soft and timid voice. Her beautiful face was pale, perhaps because of the shock. Her eyes were filled with tears, and her timid appearance made one feel pity for her. "Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I'm here. It'll be fine." He patted the woman's back and pulled her into his arms to comfort her, taking advantage of the situation. It was unknown whether the woman was shy or afraid. She curled up in his arms and did not move away. Even the other woman who was being supported by the old woman did not find this scene inappropriate. She looked at Song Ming with the same gratitude as the old woman. "Song Ming. You pervert. Come and help me." The enraged Duan Yi cursed and swatted away the sword of a Foundation establishment cultivator. While he was retreating, he shouted loudly. His voice was filled with anger. Almost as soon as he spoke, even Feng Jiu and Ning Lang, who were sleeping in the tent at the foot of the mountain path, heard him. "Don't worry, I'll go help. It'll be fine. With me here, I won't let anything happen to you." When he saw the beauties, it was as if he had changed into a different person. There were only two beautiful women in his eyes. Even his voice and expression became gentle and affectionate. He almost angered Duan Yi to death. "Song Ming. I'm coming, I'm coming." You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.